Good morning, sir. Dr. Arvind.
Good morning. How are you all?
We are okay. Going on, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Arvind.
Good morning.
Dr. Arvind, Professor is our director, and Dr. Professor Murali Sambhasimam.
Pleasure to meet you, Professor.
Very nice to meet you, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
So currently you are in Chennai or in Madurai, sir?
Chennai.
Chennai. Okay, sir.
Yes. So all the students are now connecting via the same link,
Zoom.
right?
Yes, sir.
How
yes,
many
sir.
students?
120 plus 60, around 180 students will come. 170 to 80 students will come.
What is the job? Where do they come from? Typically, are they all from nearby Madurai or where do they?
So basically we have a good diversity from other states also. So because of pandemic, we have a little less number from other states.
How many will be from other than Tamil Nadu?
Typically I'm telling about the past years, around 40 to 50 students used to come.
40, 50 students, about one third of them. Okay.
In PGDM alone, 120 students. So because in MBA, we have 60 students coming from direct from Tamil Nadu transit examination, TAN-CET. So that is from 60 students in MBA, which is 50% of the total population of MBA.
Okay. Yesterday you had Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan speaking.
Day before yesterday.
Day before yesterday. Yesterday who spoke?
N. Ram, Hindu.
Hindu N. Ram. Thanks to technology, you are able to get good people connecting.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
No one can say, no, I am unable to come to Madurai. So
Absolutely, no excuse. I think part of that main reason is one is technology, another is the relationship Mr. Manikam Ramaswamy cultivated.
true.
And I think that is something which goes, all of them are coming for that relationship.
Yes. Tomorrow we have Viswanathan Anand is coming, the Grandmaster.
Oh, wonderful.
Exactly at 10 o'clock we'll start, sir.
We have
Sure,
4 more
sure,
minutes.
please. Yeah, no problem. No problem. I just wanted to connect early to make sure everything is all right. My voice is clear, everything is fine?
Loud and clear, sir.
Good.
Students, switch on your videos.
So tell me the format, about 30-35 minutes of talking, and will there be questions or what?
Yes. So you can talk about 30 to 40 minutes, followed by some questions by the students.
Fine. Okay. Professor Murali, you are from, where are you from?
Okay, I mean, basically, I am from Chennai.
Okay.
Okay, but well, I did my PhD in US and I stayed in Malaysia for nearly 21 years as a senior professor in the university. So I came back to India about 9 months ago,
Okay.
and I took over as a director of TSN.
Excellent.
Dr. Arvind, I think you have met our previous director, former director, Professor N. Venkateswaran.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even our chairman's, late chairman's program was there, that memorial lecture.
Yes.
So that time also Professor Murali sir is there.
Oh, okay.
You also met them. I think some formal meeting was happened.
Ah, okay. So this is where we had you had a small stage up there.
Exactly. Yes.
Ah, okay. Oh, Professor Murali, you were there then?
Yeah, during that time, but I was not sitting on the stage. I just came to attend a meeting.
Okay.
So
you just participated.
And asked me to join the event, so I joined.
Okay.
You can start, sir.
Yeah.
10 o'clock. Yeah.
Good morning, all. So, as the part of this our orientation lecture series, we got another eminent person today. Dr. Arvind is in front of you. He is associated with the Arvind Eye Hospital, which is itself is an institution. It's very famous in worldwide. So I am not going to talk much about him. So I request Professor Balaji, our Dean MBA, to briefly introduce Dr. Arvind.
Thanks, Uthar. Good morning to everyone. It gives me immense pleasure in introducing Dr. Arvind Srinivasan. Dr. Arvind Srinivasan graduated in medicine from PhD Institute of Medical Sciences, Coimbatore in 1992 and completed his master's in ophthalmology from Aravind Eye Institute, Madurai. Having worked in the medical field, he had a passion for management. In 2000, he did his MBA with specialization in strategy from the University of Michigan, USA. After MBA, he took over as the administrator of Aravind Eye Care System and was instrumental in bringing changes to the various facets of the organization. From 2011, he is serving the organization in the role of Director Projects of Aravind Eye Care System. He is the board of Goval Trust that runs the Aravind Eye Hospitals. From September 2017, he is leading the Aravind Eye Hospital, Chennai as Chief Medical Officer. His key activities include administration of the hospitals, encourage innovations, building relationship with partner organization, and evaluation of new projects and ensuring the replication of Aravind way of doing things, that is through teaching, training, and mentoring. On the clinical front, Dr. Aravind is a high-volume cataract surgeon. He works with all stakeholders in the respective branches to ensure harmony in work, mentoring staff to implement innovative ideas to ensure better patient care. His contributions include guiding B-School students from USA and Netherlands through project at AECS, which is Aravind Eye Care System, in identifying the needs to increase the quality of patient-centered care. He also builds Aravind new projects and ensure growth in service care delivery, grooming managers in the system for increasing operational efficiency. And as a trainer and mentor at management courses offered by Leico, which is a part of the Aravind Group, he contributes in extending the Aravind model of high volume, high quality, affordable cost eye care to the developing nations. Aravind Eye Care System has evolved into a large eye care service provider. Currently, AECS has 6 tertiary care centers, 6 secondary care centers, 6 community clinics, and 73 primary eye care centers across Tamil Nadu and Puducherry states in India, through which 4 million outpatients were screened and 463,000 plus surgeries performed during the last year, out of which 60% of the patients received the care either at free of cost or at highly subsidized cost. Dr. Arvind's area of specialization concentrates now on overall evaluation and interpretation of performance of each division and to track progress of performance so as to facilitate benchmarking both internally and externally to achieve patient-centered care across the system. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Aravind to the batch of 2022. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning to all. At the outset, let me congratulate the batch of 2022. It's indeed a great step for you in your career to get into a prestigious institution. And it gives me more happiness that my late friend, Mr. Manikam Ramaswamy, cultivated this institution. His father founded it, but Mr. Manikam Ramaswamy continued the legacy, and I'm indeed happy, and I'm sure he is with us all looking at the proceedings of the day, and he'll be with you all in your careers. These are interesting times, interesting the way we connect with each other. I was just talking just before the meeting, you're able to get people connecting. It doesn't matter where you are now in the world. You are able to get the best talent available to come and talk to you. How you are learning is how Harvard Business School students learn. How you are learning is what the best B schools in the world learn. And today, I think the world has become a limitless place. And this COVID, though there are a lot of downsides to COVID, there are families who lose their dear ones, and they suffer. They have emotional anxiety. But I think it is also bringing in a lot of good changes, which will have tremendous ramifications in the decades in your lives. I think you are. I think in the future you'll be called as the COVID batch. The COVID batch, which is, I would say, it's in the cusp of change. That such tremendous changes happen only during a crisis. They say World War II killed millions of people, but World War II gave great organizations like United Nations, gave organizations like World Health Organizations, which cut across nations, which cut across races and small boundaries, and started looking at the world and trying to find balance for the entire world. And also technological changes, the kind of rapid changes that you see though the companies which are small to begin with, like TikTok, the Chinese companies, in a span of 4 or 5 years, they have become multi-billion-dollar enterprises, such that India is waging a war by cutting oxygen to these companies. So these are very interesting times. So what it tells me is, doesn't matter where you are, your education is guaranteed, world-class education is available. Second, doesn't matter where you are able to build a billion or trillion-dollar company. So that gives you a tremendous advantage. If all you need is a good internet and an idea, and the world is ready to come to you. None of these founders of these companies, TikTok or whatever is the big companies that you see, WhatsApp, I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg has become a big man with Facebook and all that. But they were ordinary people. They were not people born with a silver spoon. And I'm sure each one of you today has that silver spoon. That silver spoon is internet. That silver spoon is the virtual platform that you all have, that you are able to leverage. And we are in a very interesting phase in our country. I think India as a country, as I said, this generation, I would have called it the cusp generation, even if COVID was not there. For the simple reason, India is at around $2,000 per capita. A lot of aspiration. Look at your generation. Look at the previous generation. They're all very aspirational, well connected with social media, a lot of good ideas. People want to voice their opinion. They're assertive, and they don't want to wait for changes to happen. So that's where we are. This journey from $2,000 to $10,000 per capita, which will happen, which has to happen. Each one of you is aspirational. You would want this change to happen, and you will be leading this change. As a generation, you will be taking this country from $2,000 per capita from 2020, maybe 2035, 2040, when you are maybe 45 years of age. You'll be the leaders at that stage of your life, and you would have seen this journey. What it does is a tremendous opportunities for your generation. The opportunities that will make some of you like Sundar Pichai, even bigger than Sundar Pichai, the opportunities that will make some of you billionaires, maybe multi-billionaires, and the opportunities that will make you, make the country proud of you, and the institution that you are part of proud of you. And these are all, changes which I don't think your father or mother or your grandfather or grandmother would have even dreamt of. Maybe 5 years ago, people wouldn't have dreamt of these changes. So you are really, I would say, the blessed generation in spite of COVID, or maybe due to COVID, because of all these changes. Now, when I was invited to give a talk to you all, one is I spoke about the opportunities. What are all the things that are there? I have painted the world for you in rainbow, multiple colors, bright. You all have a great future. Now I want you to think along with me. Take the next 20-25 minutes to think along with me. I want to share two thoughts with you, just two thoughts. And I want you to reflect on these two thoughts very deeply. One is long-term thinking. What is the difference between short-term thinking and long-term thinking? The way to think, that's number one. Number two, think holistically. Don't think about yourself. Think about the society. Think about the community. Think about how you got here. If you tell me that, sir, I worked hard and I got my MBA, yeah, that is about 10% of what made you get your MBA. Look back at yourself. Look back at who you are. Credit goes to your parents, part of the credit. Part of the credit goes to all the teachers that you have had all through your career, starting from your LKG to UKG to first standard to second standard. There is a part of each one of their effort in you sitting in that in this institution today. And the milkman that supplied milk to your house, the farmer that grew rice, the bus driver or the van driver who took you to your school, the person who came and worked at your house as a maid, or your father was working somewhere else and he made a salary, or your mother was working. So look at how your electricity that came to your house, the water that came to your house, all of them are now getting into this MBA class. If you think you worked hard to get it, that's 10%. Please take the credit for 10%. But 90% does not belong to you. You are sitting on all these people's laps and they have put you where you are sitting. So remember that to think about a perspective on the holistic front. I'll delve a little deeper on it once I finish the long-term thinking. What do we mean by long-term thinking? As a business student, when you're joining, what is your horizon of thinking? Your horizon of thinking may be, I should finish this course well, I should get a job. It's a good goal. But your mother, how does she think? What is her horizon of thinking? Does your mother think of the job? She has not changed her job. She has been a mother for the last 25 years or 23 years of your lifetime. She has not said, I'm bored of this job. She has not got a pay rise even one time in her career. Maybe many of us don't even acknowledge what our mothers or fathers have done, but they continue to be your mother. Your grandfather and grandmother, without them, your mother and father wouldn't have come. Without the grandfather or a great grandfather, you wouldn't have come. So look at, when I say long term, that's what I mean. You look beyond your generation. You'll be a grandfather at some point of time. You'll be a great grandfather, great grandmother, grandmother, all of that. So how would you want that generation to look at you? Your grandfather, imagine you are from a family. Your grandfather had borrowed a lot of money and left your family in debt. Your father worked hard to get out of debt. He struggled. And now you are in debt. Imagine what kind of a legacy your great grandfather has left. But be thankful that they may not have added anything to you in terms of properties, but they have not left with something under. So they have completed their life. They have given you a platform today that makes you and be part of this great institution. And today we don't, it's very difficult to think long term today. This world of short-term pressures. Today we are looking at 24/7 instant news. Every WhatsApp message, our lives goes from one WhatsApp message to the other, and that's a millisecond. Every second you get a WhatsApp message. We keep unconsciously checking the phone. All of us, including me, as an eye doctor, I find many people get dry eye. Many people get eye-related problems because we are constantly staring at the mobile phones. So how long is long term? I'll give you an example. You're all part of an institution in Madurai. So let me take an example of Madurai. So Madurai has a beautiful temple. I'm sure some of you who are from Madurai or some of you have visited the temple, Meenakshi Temple. Meenakshi Temple was built roughly about 800, 850 years ago. So Meenakshi Temple was built over 150 years. Maybe about 5-6 generations have built this particular organization. And then the first generation bought the land, 18 acres of land, and 5 generations built it. And look at it, it has stayed for 800 years or 700 years since then. So I'm going to ask you, each one of you, what is your 1,000-year project that you're working on? Rajaraja Cholan built a temple in Tanjavur. That's about celebrated 1,000 years about 4 or 5 years ago. So what is the 1,000-year project each one of you are working? So when that's a very interesting question, because the world is in trouble, right? You all understand the troubles of the world. We don't have enough to feed every person. The world is getting warmed up. There is a crisis in terms of weather. And you already see, right? In Kerala, you already saw 55, 60 people have lost their life because of undue rains and landslide. So all this is human making. These are not God sent. These are all things that we are disturbing the ecosystem. And then that's the ramification that we are finding. Like what you saw in Beirut, the bombing. This was not God sent. This was some people who brought that explosive and kept it and wouldn't act on it. So a lot of times what we see, the repercussions of the follies of our work is what we kind of have to suffer or benefit in the longer term. So why are we short term? As a generation, why are we short term? And more so in your generation, the tyranny of the clock. We are restless. We are absolutely restless. Every time we are looking at the clock, sir, what will happen to my career? I've been only in this job for 6 months. There is no career prospect. I have not grown at all. I've spent 2 years of my life or 1 year of my life in business school. I've not got the value. So every time we are trying to rush through and not try to go deeper. So look at a person who builds Meenakshi Temple. Built over 150 years. Done, maybe they did things very slowly. They didn't have all the technology that we have today. but look at the quality of work that they have done. I'm asking a question. How many of the Googles of the world, Facebooks of the world will survive the next 500,000 years? I would think very, very few will survive that kind of the journey. Maybe it's a physical asset. That's why they survive. Maybe that's not a physical asset. It's an intangible asset. But they all are significant. I'm not taking away anything away from Google or Facebook or WhatsApp. They are like electricity. They are changing the world in their own ways. But I want each one of you to start stepping beyond your generation. Think like your grandfather or a grandmother or a great grandfather. See, you and I are connected to the first human being in the world. First human being came to this world millions of years ago. Each one of us has a gene from that person, right? So that's how we are connected. Don't believe that we are just coming from our mother and father. Our mother and father have not jumped from the heaven. They are people who are brought from the previous generation. So each one of us carry something within us that belongs to the previous generation. We also carry something within us that belongs to the generation ahead. So please remember, we are kind of running a relay race. What is it that we are going to hand over? Your career may be 30 years, 35 years, but what are you kind of going to hand over to the generations that are coming ahead of you? Digital distraction. We're tremendously distracted today, right? You have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have WhatsApp, I'm sure what all, TikToks of the world. And that is the kind of distraction that you see. People forget to eat, people forget to sleep. So that's the kind of world that we are living in. All these are driving short-term thinking. Even the politics of today. Look at what is happening in US. Look at what's happened in Tamil Nadu or everywhere in India. It's about the next election. Even leaders don't think 1,000 years. Leaders don't think 100 years. Leaders don't think 150 years, which is very sad. So that is the kind of responsibility that we have, that not leaders, but each one of us have to start thinking differently. Speculative capitalism. I'm sure at some point of time you will be introduced to your finance classes. You'll be going through valuations. You'll learn about portfolio. You'll learn about markets, stock markets. Look at how stock markets. One day up, everybody feels good. One day down, but nobody thinks long term. Long term in stock market is only 4 years or 5 years. It's not 1,000 years. Stock market doesn't work that kind of a horizon. But some of you and I can work in that kind of a horizon. Again, the burden of network society. Look at COVID. COVID did not come in a bus or in a train. COVID came in a plane. We are a network society. COVID was brought to this country by people who were able to travel from one place to the other. So it's very important to realize that this network society has advantages, but also has some disadvantages as we are experiencing. And the other problem that we all have is perpetual progress. We all want to become better than the other person. We all want to become. At what cost? If each one of you wanted to have a plane on your own, look at the skies of this world. We are kind of wanting to be the most successful person in the world. At what cost? So all these are driving you to think short term. So be aware of these follies. Be aware of all these things. These are not what made your grandfather, grandmother, great-grandfather to make who you are. So what makes you long-term thinker? How do you become a long-term thinker? Deep time humility. This is where you need to think, as I said, beyond your generation. Be loyal to your great-grandson or a great-granddaughter. How do you be loyal to your great-grandson or a great-granddaughter today? So when you have a two-wheeler or a car, when you change the car, ask yourself, am I loyal to my great-grandson or granddaughter? When you change your phone, ask yourself, is it necessary? Is it mandatory? Do I need this or not need this? So don't be driven by envy because the other person has it, you need to have it. So it is some of these deep time humility is something which you need to think. So don't look at time superficially. Think time deeply. Second, I would recommend each one of you to have a legacy mindset. I was talking about Mr. Manikam Ramaswamy, his father. That's a legacy, right? It's a generation. Today, Manikam Ramaswamy is not there, but the legacy that he has left is what makes each one of us sit here and talk to each other, learn from his life, and also learn from the platform that he has given each one of us to share. So what is the legacy that you want to give? I'm talking about a legacy of Mahatma Gandhi has left a legacy. Forget Mahatma Gandhi. Your father has left a legacy. You are your father's legacy. Your grandfather has left a legacy. You are your grandfather's legacy or your grandmother's legacy. So what is the legacy? So what if they look at you? What would they say? I have brought a youngster who is about 20, 21, who has worked hard and who is sitting in one of the finest business schools in the country. And then he or she will be able to bring that change. So remember, you stepped on your mother and father to get here, not on the steps of the college. Your grandfather, grandmother, all the teachers, they were the steps on which you climbed to reach this particular situation where you are. The third aspect I would like you to think is intergenerational justice. It is not justice to your generation. I was kind to my father. Fine. Are you kind to your son? Are you kind to your great grandson? So that is called as intergenerational justice. What that means is, it is not only for my generation. Sir, I should be happy. I should have everything. I don't care whether other person has everything. So immediately you should ask, it is not the other person. Other person is going to die and be gone. Why is COVID so special? I think for the first time in the world, at least in this generation, COVID has brought the fear of death. We were all thinking we were not mortals. We were immortal in our living. We will live forever. The technology will come. That's how we think. We all know we die, but we seldom think about death. We have seen our fathers getting older, mothers getting older, grandfather getting older. Maybe they have passed away. So death is very real. Huh? For each one of us, death is real. Death is not unreal. But COVID has put a mirror in front of you and said you're vulnerable. You are not going to escape from this. So you need to protect yourself. You need to wear a mask. You need to wash your hands. You need to protect in multiple ways, distance yourself. So that's what COVID is teaching you, right? You are distancing physically, but don't distance yourself emotionally. That's why you talk to your grandfather or grandmother, they will say, man, why are you locking me up in a room? I'm 80 years. I don't care whether COVID comes or not. I want to live my life. What is this life? I can't talk to anybody. I'm locked up. And they're emotionally deprived. So remember, physical protection and emotional protection are two different things. I mean, take the example of Sushant Rajput, who committed suicide. Forget all the controversies, but look at him as a suicide person who committed suicide. He was physically protected. He was successful. Outer world, he had everything going well. Beautiful home, beautiful women, beautiful movies. He was an upcoming star. What happened? He was physically protected, but emotionally vulnerable. So it is not unreal. I mean, look at Coffee Day Siddhartha. Physically protected, right? He had all the money, he had all the network, he was connected well, but he couldn't take the stress. So please remember, you need to think long term so that you're not caught up in this game in a shorter term basis. Cathedral thinking or temple building, that's another stage, which I had said. Meenakshi temple was built over 5-6 generations. So that is cathedral building. How do you think that kind of a project? How do you conceive something? So you don't get carried away. You don't say, oh, I'm part of a startup. Is it coming deep within you? Or you're just following your friend or somebody, or they are going somewhere. Imagine you're driving a car and there is another car going in front of you. He's going a little faster. You start racing that car, right? That's what most of us do, right? When there is a car, you want to race that car. Unconsciously, we get into this competitive spirit. You race the car. But imagine you're going from Chennai to Madurai. And that car is, say, going to Pudukkottai. Will you race the car and go to Pudukkottai, or you want to go to Madurai? Will you go to Madurai? So remember, your destination is very different. Your destination is what you choose it to be. Not because the front driver or the driver who drives that car goes to a particular destination. Don't make that your destination. Ask yourself deeply. It doesn't matter whether you're able to do it or your great grandson is able to do it. But that thinking will make sure that you don't make stupid mistakes. Short-termism brings the possibility of committing a lot of mistakes that leads into deeper trouble. And also a transcendental goal, a goal for the world. That in each one of us make the world. History is not made by Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and all the big people, the Gandhis of the world. History is made by you and me. The small actions that we do every day is what makes history. Your father, your mother has made history by bringing you up. You make history by stepping into this institution. You will get married, you will have your kids, and then you're leaving your legacy. So they are, you can see your family line, right? You may know about 2 generations or 3 generations, but you and I know there have been 10, 15 generations before that for you to exist today. You're not existing in isolation. That's all I'm saying. You know, it's like this big banyan tree. You see the central root. Unfortunately, sometimes the banyan tree is so much you don't even see the central root. That's what we all suffer from. We only see the root of our mother and father, but the central root was put 200 years ago. But we seldom think of the central root. So all I'm asking you is, what are you doing today to nurture that central root and nurture the present root, so that somebody else will look at this root as a central root in the centuries to come. So I hope I've communicated this point to you of work within this time frame, but think absolutely long term. Think where you make a horizon. The results may not be seen today. It's like somebody planting a tree. Somebody plants they say a coconut tree, or the yield will come for 40 years or 50 years, but they're not planting for their generation. They're planting for the generations to come. So I would like each one of you to definitely slow down a bit. You can see what COVID has done. A small virus, 2 nanometer, has stopped the music of the world. All the people who are running around like headless chickens, including me, you know, we were all running like headless chickens, right? One airport to the other, one place to the other, as if the whole world depended on us running. And you stop the world, you stop all that movement, the world has not stopped. The world is going on fine. Last month's GST collection was 87,000 crores from 1 lakh crores. That means the business is happening. People are not going, people are not folding down. People are resilient. But don't think momentum is life. Momentum is not life. You need to have a purpose. You need to have a goal. And all I'm requesting is, think beyond your own career, your own generation. Then you will make the right choices and you'll be a happier person. You know, we are all happier when we are able to do something for someone else whom we don't see. And that someone else is your own relative, is your own blood relative. I'm not even asking you to think about your neighbor, but I'm asking you to think about your own children, that what kind of a world you want to leave for them. The second point I said, you know, the world is a very skewed place. The world is a very funny place. And as an MBA, you will realize it. What does MBA teach you? I'm an MBA. What does MBA teach me? MBA teaches me a set of tools to understand the world, a set of tools to understand and communicate to the world and make people work a little better. But MBA does not give you any individual skill. As a doctor, I can do surgery. I can heal a patient. MBA does not give you that skill. Does not make you an engineer where you can say, I'll build a bridge, I'll build a dam, I'll build this machine, I'll build a computer. MBA, unfortunately, MBA is not that field, right? So what does MBA do? MBA is like this person who conducts the orchestra, right? He does not know how to play any one of the instruments, but he understands music. He is able to make each one of this person play their music to the best of their ability. So your success as an MBA depends on everyone else's success. Remember that. You can't succeed at the expense of another person. Imagine you're working in a hospital, which I am part of. Unless the doctors, the nurses, all of them succeed, how will you succeed? You can't come and say, I'm the CEO, I don't need a doctor or a nurse. Then we don't need you. Right? So it is very important for you to think holistically. Remember, MBA is, I somehow feel MBA is a very beautiful profession because it is one profession that puts effort in making others better. So remember that thought. And I said, and also, unfortunately, MBAs are paid more. When I say unfortunately, maybe the barbers in the world, as an eye surgeon, I'm not needed that much as a barber is needed. Barber is needed by everybody every month. Unfortunately, that fellow is not paid much. I don't know why. It's the stupidities of the society. You know, the society treats people unfairly. And a person who feeds us is not paid as much as an MBA does. But that's not fair, right? The world will go without an MBA. World can't go without food. Right? So sometimes you need to have the deep humility to understand that, just because you are an MBA, just because you're from a good institution, fine institution, please have that humility. Please have that humility that Imagine you're standing at the top of the pyramid, right? As a pyramid. You're standing at the top because there are millions of people in the bottom supporting you. Starting from your teacher, starting from your bus driver, starting from the farmer, starting from the milkman, starting from the newspaper. And look at countless people, the person who puts gas cylinder to your house, all of them have made you. So you're standing on top of them. So don't act as if you're standing alone. If these people all move away, you will drop from the top. As I gave the example of the hospital. Send the doctors home, nurses home, you will drop. There's no CEO needed. You don't have a position, you don't need a position. So be thankful. This world at this stage appreciates your degree. You will say, oh, we get this CTC of this much. This is the cost to company. We will be paid this much. You will compare. And please take that with the humility. It is the world is paying you forward, not for who you are. Who you are will be proved 10 years from now, 20 years from now. But the world is assuming that you will contribute. You will contribute and make this world a better place. So please have that as a responsibility. Don't get carried away by the money you make. Don't get carried away by the positions that you would get. Remember, you are a human being at the end. Doesn't matter who you are. You'll always be a father. You'll always be a mother. You may change a job for 10,000 rupees a month, 15,000 rupees a month. Imagine your mother and father had played that game. They should have changed you every 2 years, every 3 years. The other kid looks more beautiful than you. The neighbor's daughter looks more beautiful than you. The neighbor's son is studying better than you. The neighbor's son has got a better sports ability than you. But your father and mother have not ditched you. Your father and mother have not thrown you out. So remember to think long term. Remember to think holistically. And as I said, you are the blessed generation. The world depends on you. We all depend on you in that sense that the continuity depends on this generation. And I'm not putting pressure on you, but I'm just showing you a mirror. I'm just showing you how responsible and how blessed and how thankful you should be. And enjoy the journey. And as I said, my topic was, this is a lifetime journey. For each one of you, this is a lifetime journey. Make the best out of it. Go visit the world. Go make your mark. But always remember, it's like, you are like a kite. You can fly as high as you can. But remember, you are connected to the ground by a thread. If the thread is cut, you are no more existing. You fall down. Always remember and nurture the thread. That's what I said about the pyramid. No matter where you are, but please nurture the pyramid. Sundar Pichai becomes Sundar Pichai, doesn't disown his father and mother. Doesn't disown his legacy, right? So this is India's time. We are here to tell the world that we are coming back to glory. 300, 400 years ago, India was in glory. And this is India's time. And you people are going to champion it. I'm sure this education will give you better tools. And I have the faith and trust that each one of you will contribute and make this world a more beautiful place. And please remember, I'm talking a lot about India. India is man-made. Any country is man-made. We have all drawn boundaries. It's the world. We all belong to this world. We need to nurture this world. All these boundaries are political. We all draw. Suddenly you will find when the IPL starts, each state starts fighting. CSK will fight with some other team in Kolkata, some other team. So we are all having this clan mentality. So grow that mentality out. Look beyond. Then we will bring religion and we will divide ourselves into two. We'll bring caste and divide ourselves into two. We'll bring cities and divide ourselves into two. So please ask these deep questions. Who you are? What does time mean to me? What does intergenerational justice mean to me? And have a phenomenal journey ahead. All the very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was an excellent lecture on strategy. Really, our students are so fortunate to hear from you. So thank you for being optimistic. Thank you for giving us hope. Your two important words on long-term thinking and holistic thinking will always be enriched in us. And your words like momentum is not life, purpose and goal is life, happiness and humility is what matters. Great words, sir, really. I have a series of questions from the students. Just put it to you. Question from Dinesh Rajendran. All right. So since the emergence of COVID, other activities of hospital sector has been affected or postponed. All right. So how does Aravind got affected in terms of surgeries and eye checkups? That's one. We have a similar question from Franica Joseph as well. What are the challenges you are facing as an organization due to this COVID-19?
So let me give you a little brief about Arvind, right? So I also saw a question about what is the goal, right? So Arvind today caters to 100 million people. So we cater to Tamil Nadu, which is about 72 million. And then we cater to Pondicherry, about 1 million. And parts of Kerala, parts of Andhra. We have a hospital in Tirupati. So we cater to 100 million people. In that 100 million people, 45% of all eye care is provided by Arvind Eye Care System, right? So that means this community, 100 million people, 45% of the people who need eye care walk into any one of the Arvind Eye hospitals. So one is, if you really look at from an MBA term, you would call it the market share. But another share is your responsibility. You will have to keep the vision of this community going. It's like a policeman, right? You keep the society safe as a policeman. As a doctor, you keep the society healthy. As a teacher, you keep the future generations thinking and healthy. So each one of us have a responsibility. So what has COVID done? COVID unfortunately affects the older people, as we have all learned by now. Eye care is a problem of older people. Young people wear glasses, but surgical interventions and all that is for the older people. So a lot of people are going blind in the community. So we are handling only 25% of our patient load and surgery. So I have two concerns. One is the community. So many people are going blind because they are not able to come. They are fearing, nobody is there to bring them. We are not able to conduct eye camps. We are not able to bring. So that's a society's problem. What is our problem? You are going, again, business school thinking, right? Eye care is healthcare is high fixed cost. You know, people complain about, oh, hospitals are so expensive. So much of money is spent. The problem with hospitals is high fixed cost. It's like your airline industry. You know, you have an airplane. If you don't fly, it doesn't matter. You can't fly with one passenger. You can't make money. You need at least 75 to 80% of the aircraft to be filled to make money. So your variable cost is less. That's the fuel cost. So same thing with Arvind. So our concern is we are about 5,200 employees. How do we pay salaries to 5,200 employees? It's not 5,200 employees, 5,200 families. 5,200 families, each family assuming they have 1 or 2 children, 5,200 people, ability to pay school fees, ability to feed and take care of their father or mother. So you suddenly start thinking little louder, little larger. Our concern is not only the community which we serve, but our concern is to the stakeholder who is making us all this possible. So we are trying to balance. We said we will not cut salary. We will pay salary in spite of what has happened. And fortunately, again, should thank our founders who had the long-term vision. They have not borrowed money. They have kept enough money in place to be able to pay during this crisis time. And those are the two things that are there. But the society is opening up. You know, as you know, COVID, we are able to manage better. Indian mortality rates are low. So I hope we will come back to where we were maybe in the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah. There's a question from Chaitanya. The crux of the question is this. What do you think is the role of a private sector in the healthcare system? Which means he wants to say that, is it not the role of the government to do the healthcare? So unlike other businesses, why healthcare, why private sector has to be actively involved? That's what.
Oh, I mean, Chaitanya, please remember, private government doesn't matter. If you are able to add value, you please add value. If you are able to find the economics work, please remember, private, who goes to private? It's you, people like you and people like someone else goes to private, right? It doesn't matter what the government. So don't expect, who is government? Government is not somebody coming from Mars or Venus. Government is you and me. You and me are government. We elect a government. Those are people. Your father might be a government servant, or your mother might be a government servant. So you are not, please don't segregate government and private. Find out what value is being added. That is more important a question. Government is only 2% of the employees in the population in this country. So you're expecting 2% of the population to take care of 98% of the population. Is that fair? It's unfair, right? And the government can't do everything. Please remember that. So if you can find value, it's like saying, I won't plant a tree. It's someone else's job. You plant a tree. That tree will make a difference to that particular family. That tree will bring 1 drop of rain in a year. So that's how you should look at it. So don't get caught up in this game. It is government's job, it's private's job. Your mother did not think that way. Your mother brought you up. Mother did not think somebody else will bring you up. Mother and father struggled hard to bring you up. So please think of the society holistically. If you want to do it with the government, join the government. Be part of a government servant. Do your IAS, do your IPS after your MBA. Be part of the government and do it. But doesn't stop you from doing the same thing when you are in private, right? So you can, don't segregate education, health, transportation. If somebody can add value, take Arvindai Hospital. Why would patients walk into an Arvindai Hospital? Are we the only game in town? It's like a movie. The movie has to be good, then it will run. The movie is bad, don't expect it to run. Same thing with care, healthcare also. If it is good, if it adds value, people will come. If it is not good, shut your shop. So I want you to think a little deeper. Don't get caught in this game of government, non-government. All of us are people.
Absolutely true. Yes, sir. So we have series of questions in the same theme. All right. So they refuse to see you as a strategist and leader. They are coming out of their rather than they see you as a doctor. So question from Kumaran R, Harini, Javahar, and Vignesh Shuntar. So the question is this: in the sense, of late I'm spending too much time on that electronic devices. All right. How is it going to affect my eyes? So that's what it is. He says a lot of irritation in my eyes. Just give me some tips for the eye care as well.
Yeah,
So
I'm not worried about your eyes. We will take care of it. But I'm worried about your mind.
true.
What are you doing? What are you watching? What are you thinking? Are you thinking 1,000 years ahead of time? But are you spending time doing things which doesn't add tremendous value? Like this 1 hour, you have not seen any of the screens, right? So what has happened to the world? Has anything changed? World is going on fine, right? So you're not running the world by looking at your WhatsApp or Facebooks or TikToks of the world. So you'll have to remember that. So on the eye, simple, right? I mean, anything for that matter. You run 24 hours a day, you will die. Your heart needs rest, your eye needs rest, your lung needs rest. So treat your eye gently, treat every part of your body gently, sleep adequately, sleep 7 hours a day, at least 6 to 7 hours a day. That's important. Sleep on a regular time. Don't sleep randomly. And it's not easy. I have 2 kids. My daughter is in second year medical school, and I can see those kids. My son is just about to finish school, so I can see them having this random timing, spending a lot of time on gadgets. Unfortunately, that's how the world has become. But you can be nice to your eyes. You can as I said, sleep is one thing. Second, some hot water fermentation. Take some hot water in a small glass or something, take a cloth, just gently massage your eyes at the top. Those are the things. Drink adequate amount of water. Those are the advices I will get. If it is more, please consult a doctor.
Yeah. So the next question is from Priyadarshini. What made you to do an MBA for managing a business? What's your idea behind this when you decided to do your MBA?
See, as I said, we are about 5,200 employees, right? So how do you manage an organization? See, what we do is one element of healthcare, right? Finance does not change, right? Money is a marketplace, right? Somebody gives money, somebody takes money. That's change. HR policies, HR is the same, right? Marketing is the same. There is no change here. Operations management is the same. There is no change here. It is just that what we do. What we do is healthcare. Somebody may run a restaurant, somebody may run something else. So remember, the domain is one thing where you are part of, but what as a value, what we bring is the larger holistic value. So in our case, why did I do my MBA? I wanted to add value in those segments. Are we a good place to work? Are we optimizing our employees? Are we pricing our services well? Are we reaching the community? Are we reaching the last person in the community? So those are things that will cut across. And that's what MBAs are all about, right? You add value. There is a company called Naturals, right? Which took grooming from an individual shop to a chain. What have they done? They have leveraged, the barber is the same. The person who is styling is the same. That person has not changed. Maybe new people have come into the profession. But what they have done is they have standardized it. They have created a financial model. They have created a business model. They have created a logistic supply chain. And they're able to replicate it quickly. And that's what in healthcare also you do.
Next question is from Aishwarya Yash. She wants to know about what is your long-term goals are and how are you implementing it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks for asking, Aishwarya. So I've been, I'm an eye doctor. I do my surgeries. I've been part of it. But my long-term goal is not with an eye. My long-term goal is I'm trying to do some work on elder care. people when they get older and near death, near life, end of life care. That's an area. We run a small institution near Madurai, about 100-bedded institution. So we want to create an ecosystem to be able to take care. Because you can see what happens in death, right? COVID has put everybody, put that in a spotlight. People don't talk about death. How many of you talk about death today? How many of you are willing to talk about what happens to your father when he dies, your mother when he dies, or somebody? We don't talk about it at all, right? We talk about birthdays. But we don't talk about death days. We don't prepare ourselves for death. So how do you, and death does not happen for everybody in the same way, right? People, death, there are three ways death can happen. One is you drop dead. Sir, he was fine yesterday, sir, but he died today. That is drop dead. That's only 10% of the deaths. The other 30% of the deaths is a gradual shift. Sir, he was unwell, sir, but within the next 3 months, he deteriorated and he died. It's like a slope. The other 60% of the death is, sir, he had a heart attack, he had a heart surgery, and then comes down. He lived for 1 year, sir. He was fine, sir. Then he had a liver cancer. And then he had a chemotherapy. He was fine, sir. Then he will drop. Something else had happened. Something else has happened. So that's how. So people, the society is not today ready to take care. Imagine, I'm assuming, I'm just showing, I'm sure some of you will face it. Imagine you have a grandmother or grandfather who is about 80 years, right? What do the society expect? The son and daughter to take care of the grandmother, grandfather. Who is the son and daughter? It is your mother or father. How old is your mother or father? Maybe 55, 60, right? At a 55, 60-year-old, you're going to ask them to become a nurse. How? They are already old. Your 60-year-old father is not as young as a 25-year-old guy or a 30-year-old guy. He has his problems of 60. He has his leg pain. He has his eye problem. He has his hearing problem. He may have diabetes. So remember, today's society is not equipped to handle these people. So I would like to definitely start I'm already working towards that. That will be my long-term legacy project. My 1,000-year-old project will be that. If we can bring dignity to death, dignity to end of life, that's something which I would like to work towards.
Thanks, sir. We have a question from Jawahar. In fact, he is asking the same question to almost all the speakers. When do you think this COVID scenario will end? When I can come to the college? He says that he's finding it difficult to study from home, particularly the online classes. Right. So,
Jawahar, I'm sure you have asked this question to Mr. Ram of Hindu.
He also asked the same question. He said not in the remote future. Yeah. That's what.
But remember, Jawahar, make the best of what you have. Why do you want this to change? Because it's not in your control for it to change. I don't know. I wish I know. I wish I can tell you when the COVID is going to end. I don't know. Are you going to keep complaining? Are you going to be worried about it? Enjoy this, right? I mean, enjoy your presence of your parents. You're sitting at home, eating nice meals. That's something which I can tell you. However good Tyagaraja School of Management, they can't provide your mother's food. That I'll assure you. So enjoy your mother's food. Enjoy being with your family. So enjoy what you have. Don't complain about what you don't have. When the world opens up, you will come to TSM. Trust me, you may come to TSM. Or you may not even come to TSM. Doesn't matter. TSM will come to you. So that's how I would look at it, right? So move away from it. You're looking at a dark spot in a white paper. I'm asking you, ignore the dark spot. Look at the large white paper.
Thank you, sir. That's insightful. There's a question from Professor Shivkumar. The professor asks that, can the government make eye donation as a compulsory by law? Is there any feasibility for that? Like some countries having, you have to serve in the military for some period of time. Can the eye donation make it compulsory?
Actually, interestingly, eye donation is going through a change, because there was a time when eye donation was talked about big way. Today, management of eye conditions have become better. The need for corneas is coming down dramatically. I mean, they can make the change. They can make the law. What the government in America does is a very interesting proposition. In the license, they say, if you don't want the eyes to be removed, say yes. Nobody says that, right? It's only when you remove. So people don't even fill the columns. That means everybody is agreed to give their eyes and body. So today I would say not only your eyes, your whole body. When somebody might need a liver transplant, somebody might need a lung transplant, somebody might need a cornea transplant. So all that, kidney. So I think government can make it mandatory. But please remember, whoever asked the question, Will you do it for your father and mother when something happens to them, or will you give your eye? Because when you're dead, you are already gone. But will your grandfather, mother, when they pass away, will you talk to somebody? I would always come back to you. I will not look at government. Yeah, work on it. But what are you doing? If you're not supporting this cause where you can't expect the government to do what you want to do.
This is a question from Mrs. Vali Ramasamy, madam. Dr. Aravind, what are your thoughts about the importance of teaching or instilling values in our students, who are the future leaders? The goal of teaching values is that future business leaders take a pause when they experience an ethical challenge and make more considered decisions. How can we do this effectively and also make it interesting for the current generation?
Absolutely. Thank you, madam. I think the question is very relevant, right? So I think, what is TSM going to teach you that you don't learn from other institutions? MBA is it's a course that is taught in multiple business schools. What makes the difference is the value system that is ingrained. Your family, what makes your difference in your family? Your family is your value system, what you stand for. I can't make a family by bringing a 45-year-old man, 40-year-old woman, 16-year-old girl and a 14-year-old boy and say, today onward, your family. That doesn't work that way, right? You stay together, you're born, you're nurtured, when a problem comes, the problem is handled. So I think I completely agree with you. That's where I said, please don't look at short term. In short term, values are compromised. In long term, values are nurtured. Because you don't want to be in trouble, right? I think one problem with the success is when you succeed, you climb up way high. When you fall from there, you die, or it's very painful. It's a disgrace. So I would ask you, when you climb, please be careful when you climb, so that you won't regret the way you climbed when you come down. That's why you celebrate somebody like Abdul Kalam, because even after his death, very little comes out about him. People only talk good things about him. There is nothing bad. So somewhere he lived his life in such a way that people can't find a fault. So I think each one of us in your business, every decision that you make has to be based on value. And if you ask me, you're all smart people. MBA is not going to teach you anything special. But if these 2 years, if you can learn that I will play by the rules of the game, I'll respect myself in every decision that I make. I won't be ashamed of myself. It's like, nobody is watching me. I'll do this small thing, or I'll take a risk and cut corners. Please remember, I am coming across as a preacher. All of us have gone through your age. I have not, as I said, your grandfather, grandmother, your son, your father. All of us are. I'm a father. I have been in your age. I have sat in a business school. I have sat in the class exactly where you're sitting. So the question that I'm sharing, or a lot of it is a reflection that I have seen in the last 20, 25 years. So I completely agree with Mrs. Valli's point that if I have no problem if you don't learn anything in MBA, that's fine. You will learn it in the job. But if you learn how to do it, how well you'll have to do it, and the value system that will guide you, I think you would have done a lot better in your life.
Well said, sir. This is the final question. What do you think as the increasing role of information technology in the medicine? So what are the consequences of it? What will the impact in the future as well? The increasing role of IT
consequences.
Devices.
Yeah, there'll be huge consequences. Like in every field, information technology has a tremendous, impact on every field. Simple things, right? I mean, like COVID, right? Look at the information technology helped COVID. The death rate in China and the death rate in Spain, death rate in UK, and death rate in India, America. So that's because we have learned from everybody's mistakes. Everybody's learning. So that's what will happen. Today, India, they say, is managing COVID a lot better with 2% mortality or 2.2% mortality, because we learned from a lot of other people. Imagine those dialogues that we had. We need more ventilators. All the car companies will start making ventilators. Today is the time ventilators is not what the need is. So we have learned that. So we were moved quickly. In fact, somebody was making an observation. They said in the last 90 days or 120 days, there are 6 billion. If you go Google COVID, there are 6 billion hits you will hit on COVID. You go Google diabetes, you will hit 500,000. Not 500,000, 500 million, 500 million hits. So that means the world is learning so fast. What took diabetes was discovered in 15th century, right? 500 years, 500 million, 6 months, and you have 6 billion. So the knowledge is going to be hugely powerful. We are going to learn. Not only we are going to learn from what is going to happen, technology will also help us to do things better, do things quicker. And look at the education, the forum that we are sitting in. If somebody had said in the last year, December, the whole world education will shift to this virtual platform, I would have definitely laughed at them. I would have said, you should be ridiculous. It may happen 10, 20 years from now. Not now, right? I didn't imagine this question that somebody asked, will you ever come to TSM? That wouldn't have been a question at all. School means you go physically. Education institution means you go physically. But the world can change, as you have seen, radically in these times. And that's where it gives you an opportunity. This pace of change will give the opportunities for some of you to become world leaders.
Dr. Aravind, it's a pleasure talking to you. It's a pleasure interacting with you. I'm sure the students have learned a lot. Usually we teach a Harvard Business School case study for all the students at TSM, the course, strategic management course, as well as in service operation management course. Again, your session will be very much interactive. When they go back and see the video of this, I could definitely relate much better than the initial 2-3 days of this program. It's a pleasure talking to you. Sudha, Gautam?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Your insightful talks about long-term and short-term goals. It's not only applicable to the students, it's also applicable to we faculty members and all the people. So you may be aware of that. Every year, since the inception of the PGDM program, we visit, every batch used to visit Aravind Eye Hospital in Madurai. Also, as Dr. Balaji told that in consequence, in coming days, our students will go through the famous Harvard case studies on Aravind. So I think it's a very wonderful session, sir. Thank you a lot, and we are looking forward to meet you in the physical world.
Once the situation becomes normal, we can, all students will visit.
One of our students from Kolkata told that, okay, she wants to meet you in person. So once the situation will be easier, then we will have a meeting with you in our campus itself, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director, sir. Thank you, Valimar, all the faculty members. So with this, we are ending this meeting.
Can you all unmute for 5 seconds and just clap?
Thank you all. No, thank you. Appreciate it. All the very best for each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm able to hear all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Meeting is over. Class dismissed. See you in the next session. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
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 Thank you, sir.